Welcome to Draft Stack. It is winners and losers of this draft. I'm here with Jacob. What's going on, man?
What's up? I'm excited for this episode. I know it's a little bit delayed since draft was last Wednesday, but I kind of like it like that, considering the fact that now we know the context of free agency and where a lot of these teams' heads are at right now.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it kind of makes things a little bit more clear and also makes things little less reactionary. Because at the time of the draft, like you're watching the draft, you probably love for guys like us who are scouting these players like every single day. You love most of these picks because you've seen these players play
Right.
so much. And right now, it's more of the idea, but now we're getting a real sense of what these guys are going to look like on these actual teams when they're playing in summer league. So I'm excited for this.
Me too. Me too. I think we have some consensus
Yeah,
on winners of the draft. I think if you don't mind, we can do this a little backwards. We can go with losers first.
I'm all good with that. I think that makes it more interesting.
Let's start with Brooklyn.
Oh man, historic five first round players picked. We've never seen that ever. And how many four of them were their best skills were playmaking and having just a good feel IQ for the game.
Right.
What is Sean Marks doing now? If it makes sense, if they're planning on re-signing Cam Thomas, they just trade Mike for Michael Porter Jr. If those are your two main guys, they're not passing the ball, so you need someone to pass the ball. Those guys it's bucket or nothing for those guys.
Right.
So, but I'm at the point where I'm questioning which guys for them play right away and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta think they give Yegor some run, get him some reps. Not necessarily do I think picking Yegor is in loss. I wasn't as high on him, but I think that he was going to fall if the Nets didn't take him at 8. I thought if the Nets probably could have used one of those picks, 26 or 27, trade up to the mid-teens, and
Right.
Yegor still would have been there. So I'm not sure how much I love the value play of it.
Right.
But again, I totally just see the upside of a 6'8" guard who has a great handle for the ball, unbelievable passer, one of the best pick and roll operators in the draft, if not the best one.
Right.
And he's only 18 years old, and the flashes we've just seen from him as a player is incredible.
I think the funny thing is, I'm looking back at their picks here. So it's Demon, it's Traore, it's Powell, it's Ben Suraf, and Danny Wolf. Now, my thing is, to me, they're not the biggest losers of the draft. However, they had the most picks. And so the question here is, what is the vision? What direction are they trying to go with the roster construction going forward? And so they've leaned heavily into playmaking, clearly with adding that many guards, minus Powell, who I think is just going to be a more defensive minded savant for them over time. I think he just has all the prowess for it. I do think that Danny Wolf was very much a Nets pick. They like bigs who are mobile, have the ability to stretch the floor. They didn't necessarily do that with Claxton, completely different type of player. But for the most part, when they had
Claxton he moves very well though.
Right.
He moves well in space.
So, but my thing was, I thought for 5 picks they were going to be versatile in each pick. They would go maybe 2 guards. I thought maybe 2 guards would happen. So Demon, I was like, okay, they went point guard, big point guard here, and then they went Traore, and I said, okay, well that makes sense. I guess if you're going to offset the playmaking minutes between the two of them, that makes sense. But then they went Powell, and then directly after that, they went Ben Suraf. And I was like, okay, wait, who's going to be handling the ball here? I like with the amount of, and I think I mentioned it during night 1, they have so many players that came off the books, and so to fill some of these spaces, I said, if they're going to keep them, I think they would be versatile in their selections. The only selection that I think was versatile was adding Danny Wolf.
I agree.
Which, just looking at just kind of what was on the board here, I was thinking they maybe add Newell, who they passed on for Drake Powell at 22. Then they went Ben Suraf and Danny Wolf, and I said, well, McNeely was right there, who I think is a good shooter. I thought they would have maybe, if they had done Danny Wolf and McNeely, I said, okay, that makes sense to me. And then even to me, they didn't go Penda, they didn't go Fleming at all, which to now we still don't have any answers as to why he fell to the second. Some of those guys fell to the second round. So to me, I'm a little perplexed about that, which is why to me they're a loser in the draft. They went so guard heavy. They only have one pick that speaks to the versatility in building a roster. So I don't know. I don't know which direction they're going. I don't know if they intend to maybe move one of these playmakers if they turn out to be serviceable and maybe a team takes a swing and says, hey, we'll trade a future pick for this player. I don't know if that's the point.
It feels like they're kind of just like throwing darts up, and they're like, all right, out of the 4 playmakers we chose, one of them is bound to be effective on the NBA level.
Right.
And I'm not sure that's the strategy you want to take, especially in a league that's increasing in versatility. It's more important than ever to have different guys that do different things on a basketball court.
Right. And now I wasn't as heavily criticizing from the perspective that a lot of the noise was that not all of those guards can shoot. Demon struggles to shoot the ball quicker or at least more with more pace. Traore doesn't necessarily shoot the ball fluidly yet. I think the signs are there that he could probably work towards being a serviceable shooter. Saraf is the most concerning to me. Watched him during the playoffs. I did think he showed some flashes, but the flashes didn't say that the jumper is something that is easy for him to integrate to his offense.
It's a really weird jumper. Like, he's a lefty. He does a really weird thing with his back leg where always, no matter what, go behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So the jumper is definitely far and away. I mean, and I don't think we talked about this pre-draft. Saraf never had a premier skill, and his best skill was playmaking. Right. So now with 3 guys rookies who are arguably better playmakers than him, what's his real role?
And I don't know that he shoots well enough to play off the ball.
I don't think he does either.
And unless he's going to be an elite cutter, which could be something that Jordy looks at as far as usage. I'm not sure if they're going for depth at this position so that if anything does happen, they're making security for it. But to me, with 5 picks, you can take some swings. They didn't take any swings at all. In fact, I think they went safest pick with each of the picks that they took for the most part. And what I mean by that is they went playmaking. And then even Danny Wolf is more playmaker than he is scorer. Mm-hmm. They lean so heavily into playmaking. Now, if they're trying to play Euroball as a form of offense, like they tend to lean, if that's what they're going to lean into, it kind of makes sense. But if that's not part of the plan, the overall plan of what they want their team to run like, then it further confuses me and it makes them even more losers. Now, hopefully I'm wrong. I think maybe the vision is there and we just don't know exactly what direction they're going.
Right.
But I would love to be wrong about this, but from right now, it doesn't seem like I understand what type of build they're building towards, especially since they didn't pick an elite shooter as any of the picks that they selected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before I want to say something positive before, but to your point about shooting, I think that the fact they didn't take a shooter is my biggest concern, because obviously we know how important it is today, and I do think there were a lot of shooters left on the board. I think McNeely would have been an unbelievable pick at this stage. Even in the second round, even if you want to take a flyer on a shooter, I feel like you could take Brea early on, even though that might be a little bit of a reach. But at least you're getting a guy that's doing something a little bit different.
Right.
But on the positive side of things, a lot of people are questioning the fit with the prospects together. I think in the net system and Jordy's system, Jordy's the type of guy, I think Nets offense this season, when you watch it, it's a little bit more set, which is pretty impressive for a team that was that bad. Mm-hmm. Instead of kind of plays falling apart very fast and being dependent on ISO ball.
Right.
And guys like Demon, guys like Traore, Wolf, and probably Saraf, they probably need that little bit of structure in an offense that's a little less ISO, where they know they're going to be playing within plays in certain sets.
Right. I agree with that. And I think he's done it. He's done it before. If you look at what he did with Canada, with Shea, with Nemard, with Brooks. That's not the biggest three, 1 to 3 spot lineup. However, if you have effectiveness from each of those positions at a skill or the other, or maybe multiple skills, then it can work. I don't know if that's what his idea is. Granted, we're not comparing Demon to Shea here, obviously. But I don't know if the idea is shaping his skill sets towards being effective as the primary ball handler to some degree, because you don't pick him at that spot unless you intend for him
Well,
to be your primary ball handler.
Mhm.
I wonder if I'm just wondering about the skill set as far as the other guards. Now, I'm not worried about Powell because I think because of his defense, he's gonna slide in and fit. My thing is with Traore and Saraf, is it one of those things where you have two playmakers on the floor and you're leaning towards playmaking, and then your 3 spot, 4 spot, and 5 spot are looking for cuts, looking to rotate out to the wings or out to the corners to find shooters. Now they added Michael Porter Jr., so he does shoot the ball. He struggled a little bit this year, and then I'm wondering, if they are going to go ahead and re-sign Cam Thomas. That's a guy, as you mentioned earlier, he has not seen a shot he doesn't like. So, that's another thing. Cam's not a big guy. If I'm correct on his physicals,
he's probably 6'4", just over 200, I'd say.
You could maybe run him at 2 guard. I don't imagine that they're going to run Saraf at 3, which would be interesting to me. I know he's 6'6", but I'm not sure if the defense is there to guard wings. So I'm intrigued to see what they do as far as their picks are concerned. I know that adding Danny makes sense to me from the perspective if you're going to have him on the floor with Claxton.
I think Danny's going to play this season. I think I think that's probably besides for Devin, because I think they're going to probably force Devin reps.
Yes.
He's definitely the guy that's going to play. I think Powell might have an easier path in minutes, but I'm just not sure the offense will be ready where it's to the point where he's a net negative on that side of the ball. But the defense could make up for it.
Which makes sense to me. And we'll see what that looks like. They're leaning fully into development, which I'm glad a team is picking a direction and figuring out kind of what they want to do. Whatever that looks like for them, I hope it's successful. Because I do think they're going to be a lottery team again next year.
100%.
Probably ends up in the top 5. Maybe we saw what this draft turned out to be with the flattened odds. So to turn from the Nets, who I think's future is a little bit brighter, let's shift to the Pelicans, who I don't want to bag on.
Because they've been getting a lot of like everybody on social media is out for their heads. Because it's pretty obvious trading your 2026 unprotected pick when you're for a draft class that has 3 premier talents, plus you're in the Western Conference where everyone's going to be healthy and it's probably deeper than last year. It's just a baffling decision, man. I just don't get it.
I don't understand it either. And here's the funny thing: even with 3 generational prospects, say they don't end up in the top 3, there's some good talent 4 down.
Yeah.
I'm already doing scouting on Dame Sarr, who I think is going to be one of the steals in the draft.
I went to when I was in Europe this past year, I went to one Barcelona basketball game. The one game Dame Sarr started, I'm pretty sure he had 23 points. I mean, his explosion, just the way he uses his length in that first step, it's advanced stuff. Like, this kid is going to be the real deal. Like, if I'm a team next year picking from 5 to 10, he's in heavy consideration. Now, I know we're talking this a little bit off topic, but like his rotation and his path to minutes is definitely a little unclear on Duke with Darren Harris and Isaiah Evans, but that's a story for another day.
Right. But to the point, now the Pelicans, who need to continue rebuilding, do not have a pick for next. If I'm correct, I don't think they have a first round pick for next draft.
Like, why not even put any protections on it? Like,
at least top 5.
Yeah,
at least top 5.
And I heard the story of somebody from the Pelicans organization who moved over to the Hawks organization and had ins on who Troy Weaver really wanted, and he knew he was obsessed with Troy Weaver. So what I'm thinking is that that guy went to whoever's running the Hawks now. I forget his name. But it was like, I know we can squeeze a pick out of them because he really loves Derek Queen. And that is exactly what happened.
Insane. An insane read for me in the perspective that I don't dislike Queen. I'm not as low on him as Nick is. However, I think there were better options at that spot than Queen. Just going back to it. So you pick Fears at 7. I'm not mad at Fears at 7. I thought that it would have made sense if you didn't already have Jordan Poole and DeJounte, who's working back from an injury, and you've got all this guard space. How is he going to play? There's Alvarado, unless you're going to intend to play two small guards at 1 and 2. I just don't understand what they're giving Willie Green to work with.
And then to fit with Derek Green is definitely wonky.
Unless they intend for the bench reps to build out enough time to rest scoring wise for some of the guys that they're going to start. I think they showed what their potential starting lineup could look like. However, I just didn't understand picking Queen if you still had. So you picked Queen at.
It was 13.
At 13, so a couple of spots down. And you still have, in my opinion, you have Sorber still on the board. You have, there's all these guys that I'm looking at that they just completely passed on. They could have added depth at the wing/shooting guard spot. Not so much that I don't think that they needed a big, but I thought if you're going to go big, maybe you go Sorber instead of going Queen, who to me is a more polished player. I think he does work next to Zion or next to Misi, can pass the ball, gives them a nice defensive front line. You don't select and then Carter Bryant is even there. So they just I don't know. I'm not dissing Derek Queen here. I think he's going to be a good player. It's to be seen what that looks like on an NBA floor and when he puts it all together. But I think there was more talent at 13. They could have went in direction, and maybe instead of trading that pick that they had, they could have added, maybe you trade into the second round and you grab a different guy. That Rasheer Fleming went at 31.
If they kept 23, Rasheer Fleming would have been the perfect pick.
That's what I think. I agree with you. I don't understand, because if he fell so far, to me, and I don't know about saying one's better than the other at this point. I don't want to necessarily measure him in that particular way, but to be more nuanced, I think Fleming would have been a much better fit towards what they want out of a prospect than Queen. I think Queen would have worked so much better somewhere else.
I agree.
So I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, and it's only more the baffling knowing that they signed Looney yesterday.
I have no idea.
So what's their center rotation? They're going to play all three of Looney, Misi, and Queen, who all probably need to score on the inside. And Zion, who's going to score, who primarily scores on the inside. That's why I love Derek Queen as a prospect. I think that his upside is ridiculous, especially with the way he moves for his size, the way he passes for his size. But I'm just not confident that he's going to get the spacing for him to fully operate.
No,
next
year.
year.
I don't think so either. And it's funny enough.
It's not like they're an unbelievable shooting team. You Trey Murphy, who can definitely shoot the ball. Herb Jones only shot 30% from 3 last year. There's not going to be a lot of spacing, and this seems like Willie Green is being set up to be fired. I'm being honest.
Because again, I just think if you're going big, you go Sorber. If you're going wing, Carter Bryant was still on the board. He got drafted right after. if you're talking about playmaking, since the Trailblazers went Yang, which I think was a reach. Not that I don't think he's talented, but I think it was a reach to go at 16.
Mm-hmm.
Even Yang would have made some sense. Newell dropped all the way down to 23.
Oh,
just like
another thing is that the smoke around the Hawks at pick 13 for a while was that they were going to take Newell with whatever 13.
Mm-hmm.
And the day before the draft, NBADraft.net reported that they reached an agreement that the Hawks were taking Newell no matter what. So, with that being around and knowing that teams are probably not going to take him,
right?
You let them trade down 10 spots and get your pick next year and get the guy that they've been locked onto for over a week before the draft.
Right.
That's just like, obviously we don't know what goes through these guys' heads or whatever. We don't know the money side of everything.
Right.
But just from a strict basketball fit like perspective and so logic, it just doesn't make sense.
They puzzle me.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the board again, and there weren't that many. Honestly, I feel like other teams did their due diligence. I think they were smart about their picks for the most part. You and I have talked about this before. The second round is kind of where you could take a swing. So I think anybody who had a pick in the second round took a swing on the type of prospect that they want for their team.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say those are our biggest losers. Honestly, I don't think we could harp any further. I think
what I've seen around is the consensus that Ace Bailey has been a big loser just because he didn't go to where he wanted to. But I think that honestly, Utah is a good, more than fine enough fit for him. He'll get his reps. It's obviously not where he wanted to go, but from a strict basketball percentage, point of view, it's just like with him and Will Hardy. I think Hardy's going to draw up a lot of fun actions for him. They have a lot of good guard depth. They have some pretty good passers. I think that George, obviously, and Collier both have that turnover problem a bit, but they're growing playmakers.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say that Ace Bailey is a loser of the draft, but I think that's more of a to be determined.
And I think with him, it is. I think Washington would have been okay taking Bailey, just because of the upside there. And we talked about this when we talked about, the wings. It is intriguing, or maybe we had him as a tweener because he was between wing and forward.
Yeah.
One of the things with him is how much could he drop realistically, right? Like how many teams were going to be willing to let him drop out of the top 10?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I remember saying it, and you probably alluded to it before I did. I just can't imagine, because of the talent he has, that a team is going to let him fall completely out of the top 10. Somebody's going to pick him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Utah, he didn't want to go to Utah. I think Washington would have been fun for him from that perspective. I think it's a shift in adjustment. I've heard people compare him going to Rutgers to being in Utah. It's not the same, people. It's not the same. It's very different.
No. Have you been to Jersey?
I think would have been fun. I wouldn't have minded Brooklyn as a fit.
So going into draft day, I was trying to figure out where Bailey's going to go. I thought the top 4 was set. I couldn't, because of what he was doing, I couldn't see him going to Utah. So in my mind, I was kind of like, okay, Nets have 5 first-round picks. If Bailey wants to go to Brooklyn, they're trading up for 5. That's
agreed. Right. But, which would have made more sense if we're talking about what direction they went. Mm-hmm. To me, they would have been winners in the draft. Nets would have been winners in the draft, not to go back so much to the Nets, but they would have been winners if they had gone Bailey, Demon, and then Powell, Danny Wolf. I would have been like, oh, okay, and Traore. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense to me. That works. You have 2 playmakers. You have a shooting guard who's defensive, mostly defensive-minded. You have Bailey, who's a shot creator. And then you have Danny Wolf, who can stretch the floor, and you can run some interesting lineups with him on the floor. That's the most balanced I think they would have been versus the direction that they went.
Right.
It's to be seen what Bailey looks like with them. I've said it before, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and I'm okay to be wrong about this. Not sure how long Markkanen stays with Utah.
He'll be gone within the next year. Within the next year.
I can't imagine that they're going to keep him because they're not going to be a playoff contender for at least the next 4 years, in my opinion, based on what they've started to build.
Well, I think Danny Ainge is all in on Dibansa. So we know the story. Dibansa went to Utah Prep, then he goes to BYU, staying in Utah. All funded, both schools funded by the Ainges. If Jazz win the lottery next year, I'm 100% calling it rigged.
100%. Which I wouldn't be mad at that, because to me, my thing is, we don't know. We already know Utah is going to be somewhere in top 5 again, just because of the roster construction. To be honest with you, there are some teams I do think could use an AJ. I don't think that they necessarily need to have the number 1 pick.
Right. No, I agree with that, but I do think that that's what they want. I obviously want that.
I actually love AJ in Brooklyn, truthfully.
I think that's a great fit also.
We're dabbling a little bit here. We'll talk about that on a different pod, but that works because they didn't get Bailey. So you don't get Bailey. Okay, fine. I think possibly, depending on what their season looks like, 6'9", 210. I think that works. So it's to be seen. All right, so we can swing to winners here.
Yeah.
Obviously, the most obvious winner, Mavericks.
Of
adding Cooper Flagg.
Yeah. So right now it's like, Cooper Flagg's going to be a stud. His floor is a high defensive presence with a really high feel in the offensive end. That could be a really good connective piece. Right. And he honestly fits into the Mavericks lineup seamlessly.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, a lot of people are saying the Mavericks are going to be a top 5 seed in the West next year. Personally, me, slow down. I kind of wish Jordan was on this right now so we could talk. He can speak more on it, but I don't think they're anywhere near that. It also incorporating the fact that it's Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie's not playing half the season. Anthony Davis will get hurt, and Klay hasn't been consistently healthy for a while now. So I think the question becomes, how much does Cooper Flagg do in his rookie year? Is he going to have that Wemby generational type year?
Right.
Or is he just going to be like, oh, he's the rookie of the year like Andrew Wiggins because he was the best rookie?
See, my thing is, Jordan alluded to this a couple of pods back when they first got the pick. And then as we potted a bit more, we talked about forwards even, him running point, which he called. Like the minute they got the number 1 pick, he said, oh, Jason Kidd's probably going to run him at point. Comes out that they're likely going to run him at point. So his development to me is hinged on him, how much ball handling he does, which I think is great for his it's kind of a win-win for him where he's landing. He doesn't land in Utah. I think Spurs would have been interesting, but I think that would have been overkill just off of overkill on that one. But I think overall, and I'm glad he didn't fall to the 76ers in my opinion.
I'm so happy.
Better areas could have been where he landed was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's going to be good defensively, as you mentioned. His floor is really good. His ceiling is TBD, in my opinion. We'll just have to. I'm not going to put a ceiling on it. I'll let it be what it is, and if he settles into something, then we'll say, okay, we're okay with this being the ceiling. He's still contributing. He's still effective, and it's to be seen what that development looks like. Mavericks. I don't know about top 5 with some of the moves that have been made in free agency recently. And I think the challenge is maybe them swinging too much to think about that. You let him play his game and you let him, I think one of the biggest parts of Cooper's, him being a consensus number 1 is his ability to adapt and process on both sides so fast. Now he did struggle earlier in the year at Duke with some of the offensive decision making, especially kind of in late games. As the season progressed, that started to get a bit more cleaned up and polished. And so I think to me, his shooting, his playmaking, his ability to guard 1 through 4, I don't think 5 yet. I think there's some strength that needs to be added over time. but I think he's a well-rounded player that just kind of fits where he's at. So Dallas hit it out the park. I can't imagine, and they wouldn't lose if they. Here's the thing, I and I'm probably going to get crucified for this at some point. They would not have lost even if they had gotten number 2 and picked Harper.
I agree.
It's a win-win on both 1 and 2. And even if you said Edgecombe, right? I mean, that's stretching a little bit, but I think they would have won staying top 3.
Yeah.
But Cooper dropped into a perfect scenario, which I just shifted to the Spurs.
Clear
Dylan Harper.
They're the clear-cut winners. Like, yeah, whoever gets the first 2 picks usually is a winner. But what makes it so much sweeter is the fact that they did add Carter Bryant at pick 14. They got 2 guys that are probably going to fit into the system seamlessly.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people are talking about all the guards San Antonio has. That's not a problem right now. 3 or 4 years when all these guys are wanting to get their own, maybe it is. But for a team that's trying to make the playoffs right now while growing their young core, not a problem whatsoever. It takes a little bit of pressure off Harper for table setting, but also it gives him like a chance to be much better off ball, which he already has been good off ball. He's been a good catch and shoot shooter. I think he was 37% from catch and shoot. So I think it's a good fit. Carter Bryant right away. I think he'll be a little bit buried in that San Antonio wing rotation.
Yeah, so just from because we do so much scouting, we're also looking at rosters. Keldon Johnson is there, Vassell is there,
Barnes.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that are ahead. I do think Carter might get some play depending on what situation the season looks like as far as movement. We've got a long off season, so maybe some guys get moved and that changes. I wonder how committed they are. I'm not talking about any rumors. I'm just throwing out an idea here, but I don't know how committed they are to Vassell long term. It's to be seen how much they're committed to him.
I kind of think that they value Keldon Johnson a little bit more than Vassell, just from a strict contract standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Vassell's making like $27 million. Keldon Johnson's making just under $20 million or around that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they produce at a similar rate at this point in their careers. Vassell is a little bit younger, but I think that Vassell is definitely the more expendable one. I mean, I think Brian's going to probably have to earn his minutes probably later on in the season if they're not in the playoffs, or if they're trying to make the playoffs and everybody's healthy. He's going to struggle to see the court, and he'll likely be a G League project. But if they know they're out of the thing, he's going to see big time minutes.
Right.
It fits honestly perfectly because, like we were saying, we don't know how committed they are long term to Vassell. They needed that 3-and-D presence, and he's going to provide that, and he's going to know his role right away. He knows he's not going to have to make shots, but he's going to have to make defensive plays. He's going to have to dive on the floor, and he's just going to do all the little things.
And he's highly athletic, very versatile. And I think Carter falls into a good spot from the perspective that his offense still needs work, and he won't need to produce offensively immediately.
Right.
So he's slotting into a good system that I think does, pretty good development with their players. They're going to be patient. They don't rush. I think with Popovich kind of moving from the bench up, he's still going to be a voice, I think, around, practice and stuff like that on what to look for. He's, a legend. So you're going to still get quite a bit of development from him. I think he ended up in a good spot. And then they picked 38 and then sent Cam Jones to the Pacers. So that pick is still a W for somebody. But I'm glad that they
didn't getting that insurance. They needed
that. Right. And I would say the additional win for the Spurs here is having future assets out of swapping the pick here. So from the Spurs to the Suns, who I think hit a home run, especially when you consider they got off of KD, and maybe didn't. Getting the 10th pick was interesting. I think people thought there were other packages that were more enticing. But if you can add a top 10 pick in any draft for the most part, at least in the last 5 years, you take it
And
for to get off a contract.
And especially in this draft where the top 10 was probably deeper, way deeper than most years, where
Right.
there's probably a fall off after a picks 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it for the Suns. If I just look at my board right now, no team returned more value on their picks than the Suns did,
Yep.
according to me, because I had Malwalk at 5. They got him at 10. I had Rasheer Fleming at 9 overall. I know you were a big fan of him also.
Huge.
The fact that he fell to pick 31 is mind blowing to me. I don't know if it was just because his agent's like, all right, we need somewhere where you're gonna get minutes right away, not where you're gonna be buried, but you're gonna get your run, and it's gonna be where you have a clear cut role. And he has that in Phoenix, like we've talked about multiple times. He's the prototypical modern 4/5 man, even if you want to run it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Today's NBA, he plays fast, he makes his shots, he's a great rebounder, he's hard nosed. I mean, this is back-to-back years for me where the Suns probably got my favorite player in the draft. I got Ryan Dunn last year. This year is Fleming.
That is fun from the perspective that, and I think I said it during draft night. On night 2, adding Fleming to Dunn, I just think is brilliant. And then you like, I'm just thinking of the lineups here. You have Malawak at the 5, you have Rasheer at the 4, you have Dunn at 3. You run whatever plethora of guards you have at 1 and 2. So Devin Booker at 2, maybe Green at the 1, maybe they still have Beal on contract. And then I think they have one additional guard that I'm not sure how they're going to utilize, but they're stocked at guard. And so they add, they lean to defense, which is important to me. I think if you're going to, I don't think they could have drafted better than Malawak at 10.
I agree.
Obviously, there are some people who would argue maybe they could have went Queen. I'm actually glad they went Malawak.
Queen would have just been another guy that needed the ball in his hand, and they already have 3 guards that need the ball in their hands. So, and Malawak's going to impact the game otherwise in scoring. He's going to block from his rookie year. He's just going to be a strict energy above the rim guy, nothing more, nothing less. Because that center rotation is a bit crowded right now with Mark Williams. If he goes with Charlotte and his physical is actually accepted this time, Nick Richards, Oso Iguodaro, I still believe in to an extent, just because I know what his basketball mind is like.
Right.
So that's my concern with Malawak is that if Devin Booker is going to be a good enough table setter for him, if he's going to be good enough at throwing him lobs and getting him the open looks in like in the roll game,
right?
That's my concern right now. I think Malawak will figure it out just because when you watch him, his overall feel of the game, it's just constantly grown and grown and grown. And I feel like I think he's going to adapt.
And I think my board for Phoenix, but at least what I wrote down, I didn't go as in depth for them, but I thought it would either be Malawak after getting 10. Mm-hmm. I thought it would have been Noah and Sengue at 10 if they didn't go Malawak, or I thought they would have gone Thomas Sorber at 10, which I thought you got the best. I think that Malawak was at the top of their board. They got their guy, but I think they also would have had two other guys where if they didn't get Malawak, okay, Sorber is on the board still. Can pass, does not need the ball in his hands, will play defense. Still, I think fits with Ryan Dunn and some of the other playmakers that they have as far as like guards. And I think Devin can play make. Green has shown the ability, or the flashes at least, to be able to play make. Hasn't necessarily done it at a consistent level for me to say that he's a playmaker per se, right, just to clarify that. But so they added, Rasheer and Malawak, and then they added shooting, and then traded it to a team that always has shooting, which was the Warriors and Tuhi. So Warriors get a W out of that in at 52. But to me, they just having those two picks, if you can turn Kevin Durant into Malawak and Rasheer Fleming, in my opinion, that's a W in the draft. You won. They are number 2 as far as like they're tied to me with the Spurs for adding value out of the picks that they
I
acquired
agree.
and picking who they picked. I think they retooled. They're
Fit
trying to
wise,
contend.
it makes the most sense. Them and the Spurs make the most sense.
Right. The next on my list here is Charlotte, and I think they're winners for different reasons. I'm intrigued by the selections they made. I think you talked about Khan's field quite a bit when we talked about him earlier
Yep.
prior to the draft and then a little bit before the draft. And so the sharpshooting is something that they needed. I think he's a movement shooter. He can move without the ball. He can make reads with the ball. So he's another a good fit here. I want in your case, what are your thoughts on adding McNeely and Sion James? I think Nick was a little surprised with the Sion James pick.
So yeah, I think this goes for the entire Hornets draft. They drafted 4 guys that are going to know their roles right from the get go. They're going to know that LaMelo, Brandon Miller, those are the guys that are going to get their touches. Miles Bridges will get his in sometimes, but they know that those are the guys that are going to have to get the buckets. So I think Khan is probably one of the best. He is one of the best off-ball threats in the entire draft. He's a very cerebral basketball player, and I'd be shocked if he's taking more than, I don't even know, 10 shots a game. Like, I doubt it. But like you said, excellent movement shooter, should work very well off LaMelo. Definitely helps to have him in his decision making. Someone that's going to be able to slow that down the game. Because we know with the Hornets, sometimes they'll just be like, all right, run and gun. Let's take the first shot we can get. So Khan definitely slows down the offense a little bit more. McNeely's interesting because we've all been saying, all right, can he shoot? That's a good question. We know he has a good feel for the game. We know he's a good passer.
Right.
I think Charles Lee's going to come up with some very creative ways to get McNeely open and it just could be if he can knock down his threes at this point. Then talking about Sion, I'm not sure entirely how you pronounce it, and Kalkbrenner. Sion is a high character guy. He knew his role at Duke this year. Every time someone talked to him, he'd be like, "I want to be the true Holiday in my team," and that's what he played like. He uses his athleticism to his advantage. He's a very good athlete, and I think he's a great defender. One of the best point of attack defenders in the class. And we know the Hornets definitely need that out on the perimeter, someone that's going to be up and apply pressure. And Kalkbrenner is going to be the first thing I thought after the Kalkbrenner pick was, where do I bet on Kalkbrenner being on all rookie second team?
Right.
Because he's going to be the backup center, and that pick and roll with LaMelo is going to be a lot of fun. Those lobs,
agreed.
Short roll. And also, I think that Kalkbrenner is going to definitely benefit from being a guy that's going to be – he's going to get playmaking touches right from the start, playing at the top of the key. So it's going to be interesting.
I do wonder what I wonder what Lee's usage of McNeely and Kalkbrenner from the nail, what sets he's going to run with them, because I think they may have the ability to use them a little bit from that perspective.
Right. Yeah.
Especially if you do have Khan on the floor to add both the shooting and playmaking ability, especially with a high IQ.
Right.
And I do think with LaMelo on the floor, who I think is likely going to get a lot of those passes right from that spot, because he tends to run wing to wing. I don't know if many people watch Charlotte as much, but he tends to run from one wing to the next to get his shots. Takes some very unique shots, so I think that's kind of where his shots come from. I'm intrigued to see what sets are run with both Khan and McNeely, and then on maybe with LaMelo running some type of minutes with the second unit. What the usage with Kalkbrenner is like. I also am excited from the perspective of seeing Sion James alongside LaMelo from the defensive perspective, and seeing how that offsets where LaMelo can get his and Sion doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands to be effective. I think he's going to find he's athletic, so you're going to see him on cuts. Maybe they do some short roll things with him. Not so much. You don't typically see that with guards, but because of the way that he plays with force, you might see some of that where he sets a screen and then rolls.
He gets his spots very, very well, like
Right.
all over the court. Like I think he's going to thrive for Charlotte as a dunker spot. And
Mhm.
that's like I think he'll be able to make a lot of like fun passes or finishes off of that.
Right. I agree with that. 100%. I think they added to their roster. I suspect a few moves might be coming roster wise. They likely move 2 or 3 more players off of the roster to lean into playing their young guys. They're not going to compete for a title this upcoming season unless something completely drastic happens as far as them all clicking and running off and firing on all cylinders. So I do think Bridges eventually is off the roster at some point. He ends up on some team that needs a scorer and somebody who can play some defense. And then I can't remember all of the roster construction for them, but I do think there are a couple of guys.
I mean, yeah, they had 27 guys that were under contract last year during their season. 27. It's like it's not even counting Chile. These are guys that got NBA contracts.
Which I don't know how much of that is still sitting on.
Most of them aren't there, and I know it's crazy, but this would probably be the team I'd say the 4 rookies have the best chance of getting minutes on.
Right.
I think they're so relatively thin, and so many of their young guys are very, very raw. I think we see this is definitely a big season for Nick Smith Jr.
Yes.
He's going to be competing with minutes with Sion, so that should be interesting. But the pathway for minutes for both McNeely, Kahn, and Kalkbrenner is wide open.
And so I'm looking at their roster now.
Josh Green is injured also. He's had shoulder surgery, I'm pretty sure.
So he's going to be sitting.
That makes things a lot more easier for Sion because they're similar builds.
Right.
And they'll probably do similar things.
I wonder how they decide to use Salon this upcoming season.
Yeah.
And he's on the roster. So I would say the guys that are likely going to get moved is Miles Bridges, Grant Williams. They already moved Micic.
Trey Man's a free agent.
Right. So I'm going to say that they likely come off of a couple of these contracts to free up minutes for them to be versatile with how they decide to use their roster and just, figure out what they want to do with pace. They played with a lot of pace last year. They also turned over the ball quite a bit occasionally, but that's something that happens with the young team. Next on the board here are the Sacramento Kings. Only
for the first time ever, Sacramento Kings are winners of something.
Right. Neat Clifford was a great acquisition for them. I think he's an NBA ready guy. He's going to fit. I'm intrigued to see what the floor looks like with both him and Murray, just to see what that looks like. That obviously isn't the main 2 guys, but how they function together as spacers and defenders. I'm intrigued to see what that looks like and what his rotation minutes look like when he's on the floor. Athletic guy, can get off the floor really well. I think he has a high IQ. I do think the spacing for him in Sacramento is also going to be interesting because of roster talent and just like him being able to this. You talk about scaling down roles a lot, and I've picked up a bit of it myself in figuring out guys that may need more of that to be effective in their roles on a team. And I think Neek Ness, it won't be a primary ball handler on this roster, but I do think you'll see a lot of catch and shoot. Him leaning kind of into the 3 and D a little bit. It's to be seen if he can get his shot off effectively and smoothly enough with the kind of spacing and if he can get around defenders effectively. He's a big guy, so at 6'8". So I'm intrigued to see how Sacramento chooses to use him.
Yeah, his fit is. I think he has also a pretty clear path to mid. just looking at who the Kings are going to have next year. They just lost Laravia this offseason, so that makes it easier for him to get bench minutes. Do they still have Doug? I'm not sure they still have Doug McDermott under contract.
No, I think he's somewhere else now, I believe.
Okay. I'm just looking at guys that would potentially take minutes away from Clifford.
Not to interrupt, but this might be to your point. Is DeMar DeRozan still a King when next season starts? Is the question.
So my question with DeMar DeRozan is, who's going to want him on his team? Right now, it seems like Sacramento is a place where a lot of stars are going to die right now, or just good players in general. The only team that's talking to Russ right now is the Kings. So, but yeah, there's a lot to be excited for with Neek just because of I think he's a talented three-level scorer. I know he's 23 and did it in a non-Power 5 conference, but his production was just absurd. Like, it wasn't like a Dylan Jones last year where he was like, oh, he's clearly like the best player in a mid-major conference.
Right.
He just dominated night in and night out. And like you saw with the way he played, like he would just get to the rack like with authority. He's shooting off the dribble. So he definitely has experience, obviously, being a primary ball handler, but he's also worked his way up into that role. And like we said, scalability, he's played that lesser role before. So he should be well-adjusted. Who's the Kings coach now? Who'd they hire?
That's a great question. I haven't really looked at they've made so many changes. Oh, it's he used to play for them and it just left me.
Doug Christie.
Doug Christie, who I think got them to play late in the season. Very, mostly defensive minded, does play with some pace. Very kind of his team, but I don't know exactly what they're building for him to produce.
I mean, who knows what that front office is doing? I think we've been saying that for the past 2 decades.
No clue what's going on there.
I kind of want to talk about right now for a sec, because I think the fact that he fell all the way down was shocking, considering the fact he was getting lottery buzz after that first day at the combine.
Right.
So to me, him and Hansen kind of switch places.
Yes, I agree with that. Granted, that is one of the teams that I am also, we didn't talk about, we talked about 2 losers, but I think I would and this is not a reflection of Hansen Yang, by the way. I don't know what the Trailblazers are thinking, because unless your idea is you're going to play Yang with your young center, Williams, I don't necessarily factor because his injury history has been kind of spotty and he hasn't really played as much. So I'm not necessarily factoring him in.
He's not a long-term option.
Right. But I don't know exactly what the vision is. Now, if you're saying you want to run 2 bigs because you want to run 2 bigs, okay. I do think you need spacers for that. Not sure that they have the spacers for that anymore. They added Jrue Holiday, who I think is a talented guard, but he's on the back end of his career.
And Jrue this season, his shooting, his decrease in shooting was definitely noticeable. He wasn't hitting his usual corner threes anymore. He's struggling from the top of the key. So, and Scoot's not a shooter. Like, they just traded Simons, and Kabara and Sharp are both pretty iffy when it comes to shooting the three.
Right.
So I don't know the vision, and the fact that you can't play these 2 guys together really ever in their careers, probably just because 1, the lack of spacing, and 2, they would just get absolutely destroyed on the perimeter and pick and rolls because teams just abuse the space that they will give up. So I just don't know what they're doing. If they're kind of like, all right, we have a lot of young talent on our roster that we like and know is going to be good, and we're in position to take a swing, why not take it? So yeah, I do kind of see it from that view, but also I rather would have just taken probably a big wing who would have taken Jeremy Grant's place when he was time to run.
Right. Which they stopped him.
I thought Rasheer Fleming, I'm going to say this a lot just because I loved him. Rasheer Fleming would have been an unbelievable fit on this roster.
Exactly. So I don't know. I don't know what they thought. Not to go back to losers so much, but I forgot about them a little bit because their pick. I don't know if they had another pick, um, but and we get so
They
much.
didn't have another pick.
That was their only pick, which is why I kind of forgot about them as losers. They only had one pick. I'm not really sure what direction they're going.
Right.
To go back
I
from
think
losers to winners here, if you're okay with moving on from Nate Clifford and the Kings
mm,
to
I
the
was just about
Jazz.
to say we have a perfect segue to Memphis, I think, after the Yang stuff.
Memphis is a huge winner, in my opinion. Adding
So I
Coward.
so I didn't originally include them on the list because I didn't know if the haul they gave up for Coward was eventually going to even out or even make it a worse trade in hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at what the Grizzlies have done with all these rookies the past couple of years and just developing these young guys in basketball, they have one of the best farm systems in the entire association.
Agreed.
They've turned guys like Scottie Pippen Jr., Vince Williams, Jay Huff into real rotation guys. And you see the baseline with Coward, how athletic he is, how cerebral he is, because he's a very
Mm-hmm.
smart guy. You listen to the way he talks, the way he interviews, and just his overall understanding of spacing on the basketball court.
Right.
He is going to thrive there.
Agreed. And I was thinking about potential lineups with Memphis. Just the thought of having both him and Wells on the wings is exciting defensively. You just big guys that it fits their model of kind of guys that they like at from a defensive perspective. They are still leaning as much as they are removed from the grit and grind. They still select guys that fit that mold from the perspective of size, good wingspan, can play both ways, is going to play with effort, gives their best effort, and are smart players. And so obviously those guys are not stars. And I'm not going to put any cap or potential thought about what their careers are going to look like, but they're not the main focuses of this team. However, having them as players who round out a roster with John Morant, we watched Jaren Jackson Jr. just get paid a substantial amount to stay. So you have guys who are you want to shape into rotational pieces. I think Wells had a good rookie season. And then just kind of improved throughout the season. I think Coward has the ability to go there and do the exact same thing and earn himself some minutes, rotation minutes, in my opinion. Just the defensive tools, we've talked about it, just the defensive tools. I think he's got a good wingspan. His fast twitch stuff is insane, in my opinion, as far as athleticism. And he plays with such intelligent pace. He gets to his spots. He's not impatient with his shots. I think that's something that Memphis is okay with. Having both him and Wells running the wings on fast breaks, because they are a team that tends to run sometimes. Ja has shown his ability to find guys on cuts, moves to the basket. And so I'm intrigued to see what Coward looks like with this team and adding to them defensively. Also think that them adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope gives Coward somebody to add some nuance about shooting. Obviously, he didn't have the best shooting season this season, but being a pro, shooting the ball, getting gritty on defense, and just locking in, I think that they have a proper, they got some proper guys around him. So yeah, Memphis is definitely a winner. That was their only selection, if I'm correct. I don't believe they had it.
So I think what Memphis is doing very smart right now is I think they have an advanced understanding of what the CBA is bringing, because they are totally loading up on these and taking risk, rightfully so, on these younger guys who have proved at some level to be highly capable at playing basketball. Scottie Pippen was good in college. Coward, in his 6 games, he dominated Washington State. Jalen Wells was very, very good in college. Zach Edey was the best player, one of the best college basketball players of all time. So I really like what they're doing. I think it's smart, and they're just doing it so they can pay Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr., which has happened. And I think Howard's just going to fit the game plan on offense very well, because what I noticed last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Memphis did a lot of like pin down screens where they
Yes,
would try to get guys
they
open
did.
on like that corner or those elbow extended. And I feel like Howard got a lot of shots off in that
In that
area.
spot.
So it
Yeah.
should be a lot of fun seeing him come across like ED screens.
Agreed. Who when Edie does get back, I don't know if it'll be on the first. I think it'll be probably later in this second half of the season. I'm intrigued to see what if I don't know if they signed. They may have signed somebody.
I don't think they have yet.
As far well, I was thinking maybe undrafted prospects. I'm wondering if they added anybody who can probably run some minutes if they decide that they don't want to necessarily use Jay Huff all the time. But
Right.
I'm intrigued to see what they decide to do as far as roster. I think they're going to be fun to watch, very athletic to watch. And I think they've started to kind of do what the Thunder have done, which is have asset rich contracts. And by that, I mean the value you're getting on these rookie deals and watching these players outperform their current contracts is something that most teams with a vision and who are selecting guys who have two-way ability, which I think is a premium in this league much more than it is. And I think it's equal. Having guys who can shoot the ball are always going to be a premium in the league because threes are such a big part of offense now. However, I think adding guys who are two-way also allows you a premium if you can have them on your roster for affordable contracts. So I think Memphis wins from that perspective as well.
I'm just looking at it right now. They were more like inactive compared to other teams in the unrestricted draft pool. They only signed Ace Baldwin Jr., who he's undersized but very good feel for the game. He's pesky on defense, great passer.
And that makes sense for what they tried to do.
Yep, exactly.
They are a movement kind of, especially with the new coaching situation. They definitely move without the ball, go pass up good to get great shots. They're going to find guys at the cut. I think they were top. I could be wrong about the stat on that. If I'm correct, I think that the Grizzlies were top 15 maybe in cutting. They found a lot of guys. I might be wrong about that. I think the stats prove they cut quite a bit.
Right.
So I'm intrigued to see what they do with the roster that they currently have, especially with Edie out for a little bit, and seeing how creative they decide to get. Especially because Coward is, to me, I didn't know if he was going to go top 15, but Wells is 6'8", he's 6'6", he's 21 years old, and so I'm intrigued. He has a lot of his standing reach is 8'10", wingspan is 7'2". I mean, the tools are all there for him to be an effective basketball player, and I think I talked about it on draft night. His shooting is surprisingly efficient for the wingspan he has. I think it's a good release point. I think it's fluid for him and his size. So I'm intrigued to see how it translates to the league.
All right, my comparison for him is his shooting form wise from what I've seen. I know it's a little ambitious. His shot reminds me of Kawhi. It
Agreed.
feels very like it's like in a rhythm. It's very robotic. It's the same thing every time, but it works.
And that's what and most trainers, coaches, most organizations, the best shooters have the same shot as far as feet up construction. It's the same every time, and so that means you're working good shooting habits. So for me, with that, you're getting the same motion every time, which means you're gonna get better at shooting over time. It's less off of your body as far as because shooting takes time. If anybody who's taken more than 100 shots in a practice run, you're doing it in the same motion and it being the motion that you're most comfortable with, and it's effective. I think I talked about the high release point mainly because it makes it harder to guard and to get to stop. So to me, that means he's going to be effective. I am intrigued to see what he does off the wings because he did get some of his shots there. And his ability to get to his spots, even in the mid range, he showed the ability to do that.
Right. My one counter of that is that he didn't rely on his athleticism, him being more athletic and much stronger than his opponents, which kind of helped him give him a little shoulder bump and then get that adequate space.
Right.
And that's not going to fly on the NBA level, obviously, because it's so much more physical. But I do think he's going to be, like you said, his shooting is very consistent form-wise. So I think that he'll definitely find a role as a floor spacer one way or another.
Right. Winners, but a reluctant winner, Utah Jazz. I think Ace, we talked a bit about him earlier. He's the pick. We talked about it when we were talking about him a few weeks ago. He's a kid at the end of the day. And so I've continued to see that he is just that. He's a big kid who's going to make a lot of money. He's doing, what he loves. He loves basketball. And so I'm intrigued, with all the skipping the workouts and some of that stuff, a lot of people are down on his behavior. I think that has a lot to do with the other adults around him. Obviously, he's a grown man. He can make decisions. However, there's obviously some movement or guidance there that he could probably have been guided a little bit better. Maybe explaining for why he decided to skip some of the workouts maybe would have sufficed to people, but maybe it's his business. So it's a two-edged sword there.
Yeah. He's also just still learning how to be professional and not just be a kid. You hear with the way he talks, because he'll be in an interview and you're like, wait, what is he saying? Like trying to figure out what was the
very
quote
mellow, actually.
He's like, him. It's like way back. He's like, yeah, I'm just trying to control what I can control or whatever. So he's not good. He doesn't talk like he's like such a coward where it's like, oh, you can clearly see that he has an understanding for the game. He's just a guy that just hoops.
Yeah. It's funny. What's funny about it is there were some KD comparisons, which you know how much I hate comps of guys that are elite at something, elite at scoring. They've got rings. They're clearly first ballot Hall of Famers. I understand the perspective, but I think it's rough to do that. But if we're talking about purely wanting to hoop, I think Ace, that works from that comp perspective. Athletic, has all the defensive tools. I think he is going to fit the Jazz and what they kind of want to do. I kind of see what they want to do from a perspective. If they pick guys who are athletic, have the ability to shoot the ball. I think Sensabaugh had an insane shooting year last season. And so, Ace kind of fits that. I do not know how long Markkanen ends up on there. You said probably a year and some change, maybe. I think a contender is going to knock on the door and say, hey, we'll swing whatever it is you want for him to get him, especially on the contract. Especially, not having to figure out locking him in or extending him. The contract's already in place.
You got to think that Ainge is calling frantically all these teams, asking them to take Markkanen, and teams are just hesitant because of the contract right now.
Right.
Because Taylor Hendricks is coming back from injury, and before he got injured, he was having a fantastic season. And I think he's at the point in his career where he's ready to start NBA games. Even if he's just coming back and is a little bit slower, he showed me that he's ready defensively, offensively, the spots well. You just said Sensabaugh had an incredible shooting season. He's going to need to get his minutes.
Right.
Cody Williams was very, very underwhelming, but you're still trying to develop him. You're not going to forget about your number 10 overall pick from 1 year ago. So they're going to have to make some room on the wings. They also signed R.J. Lewis, which probably not going to play, but just an interesting signing. Probably one of the better undrafted free agents.
Right.
I kind of want to pivot to talking about Walt for a little bit because, like I said earlier, they have Collier, they have George, and so Clayton is probably that final piece to that guard rotation that they're building for the future. Yes. I think eventually you're going to have to trade one of them because they're all 6'1" to 6'3", and I think Collier and George probably do similar things and will do similar things when they're at their best. So it's not a problem for right now. You have three incredibly high upside young guards,
Right.
We know how good Walt is. We've seen him be the guy that's able to take over the game. His floor as a shooter is incredible. He can play off ball. He has that mentality. Physically, he just looks ready.
Yes.
Obviously, he's gonna get hunted on defense, but he's a strong dude.
Right. Which was what was kind of the question mark with him. The shooting was never anything people questioned. The shot making, his ability to make and take tough shots, his the clutch you can't teach with him. The biggest problem was the defense. I had somebody else who scouted him was saying that he kind of looks lost on defense occasionally, and to me, that's interesting from a senior guard. You expect a little more lock in from defense on that perspective. Uh, However, I think they pick him at 18 here because of the stretching ability. Just he spreads the floor, and you're not gonna wave him off from three. I see a couple of opportunities this upcoming season, especially with the spacing. His And obviously that is between him not being on scouting reports yet. Uh, but I see a couple of games where he has 5 or more threes, possibly,
Mhm.
just because of the way he gets his shots. And so I'm intrigued with their picks, their selections. To your process on the two guards, if I think they lean Collier and probably move George.
I agree.
I think there's a team that could use a guard who can score, does know how to play make, is athletic. I think he is extremely uh, he has the ability to be very crafty with his handle. Has shown the ability to beat guys off the dribble. So I don't know what they do eventually. Utah will likely have some decisions to make as far as movement. I think if Markkinen is gone, George will likely be following right behind him as far as moves to teams that probably could better use their services, and they'll have space to kind of do that. Uh,
Mhm.
this could have been the top of the wins in the draft, in my opinion. Um, in Washington Wizards. Uh, I'm gonna allow you to speak about Trey Johnson because I think you covered him so well the last time we talked about him.
Yeah, I mean, talking about a guy who purely just gets buckets, he knows
Yeah.
where to go, and he just scores in so many different ways. He's an unbelievable shooter, movement shooter, coming off screens, just everything. He's going to be a guy you can put in so many different actions.
Mhm.
And in a team like Washington, that's going to need guys to give him scoring juice. There's no
Yes.
doubt in my mind Trey's going to come in right away and hit some and be that guy for them. Like
Yes.
probably
Yes.
be what I could see him averaging like anywhere between 12 and 15 points his rookie
Agreed.
season because
Agreed.
he is that good of a scorer and he's like he knows how to get to the spots. It's kind of not like a thing like, oh, I just have such like high IQ. He just does it. Like
It's an instinct thing for him. I was thinking about his game, and I was doing some studying a couple of days ago, and I was wondering how much horns action the Wizards are going to run with him and Bub,
so
just figuring
much.
out how to get those guys open for shots, either from mid range, which of course I think is coming back. We just saw Shai win a championship off of mid range shots. He can take the three, but that's mainly primarily it's mid range shots. But I wonder how much horns we're going to see from
Right.
Washington with those two guys.
Especially
Uh,
with Czar on that elbow.
right. So I'm intrigued to see what that looks like. Adding Will Riley to this also makes so much sense to me. Um, Kind of fits the build of players they've selected.
Yeah, I
Um,
he remind me of I think Tyshawn George was definitely a better defensive prospect.
yes,
Offensively, I think they did similar things there when they were freshmen.
agreed, agreed. So Wizards added size at all the spots, in my
Mhm.
opinion. They have some good vets around them. I know a lot of people are questioning the moves to acquire some of these veterans, but I think, I don't know how much longer Smart plays for, Middleton plays for, McCollum plays for, but those are guys who have played playoff minutes. They've got a guy who has a ring in Middleton. So some of the talent, young talent that they have on the roster, get to glean some of the thought process on how to be a pro for a long term perspective. I think Trey Johnson could not have a better vet than Middleton as far as shot creation.
100%. Just like from a smooth like shot, like knowing how to get to your spots, Middleton will definitely help that.
And then I think McCollum could probably help Trey with the playmaking aspect. And then defensively, obviously, Smart is still on the team, if I'm correct.
Yes, he is. The Wizards have been like actively trying to move him for what seems like months now. They tried that. They got him at the deadline, but they tried flipping him again at the deadline, which was for who one of the Bulls just got traded. It was they tried trading Smart
Lonzo?
and first for Lonzo, and the Bulls denied it.
Yeah. They went a completely different direction and then ended up trading Lonzo anyway and didn't get any picks back for him.
Yeah.
That's another that's a whole other conversation to have. But I think the Wizards did a good job of continuing to add to the long-term build that they're working on.
Right. And they have guys that do different things. They're a versatile team. You know, Koulibaly is more athletically reliant. While you have guys like Bob and Trey who are more savvy when they play. So we know how the defensive monster that Sarr is and what he can be. And it seems like their young players that they're choosing are guys that know their role. Like Kaishan George showed that this season.
Yes.
I'm intrigued to see how Will Riley fits that bill because he was very involved in Illinois' offense. I could see him being a guy that struggles to get minutes in his first couple seasons in the NBA. Just because he's physically not there yet, defensively not there yet, and is really reliant on his shot making at this point. So I think that's not really a great formula for a guy that's trying to get minutes.
Right.
I mean, it's an upside pick. It's an upside pick.
Yeah, and to me with him, we talked about Walter Clayton Jr. before about the shot making. I think Will also take some tough shots as well. And so it's to be seen what he does in NBA spacing. I think just overall college spacing and NBA spacing is different. And so it's to be seen what he looks like in an NBA floor and see kind of what they use him as. At his size, I'm sure that they're hoping his defensive tools are something that they can maybe work on him improving and seeing if he's able to lean into them at all. Not every guy is going to be a two-way guy, but you want your prospect to work to be serviceable on defense, and I think he has the size to do it. So it's intriguing. I think Washington did a good job. I think they are doing things the right way. I am intrigued. I will say this, and this is a shoulda, coulda, woulda kind of thing here that I'm leaning towards as we kind of wrap up. But I'm intrigued. I would have been intrigued to see what Washington would have done if they had gotten a top 5 pick versus top 10, and what they would have gone as far as selection is concerned. I don't think they would have needed Fears, in my opinion, who ended up going at the spot that he went at. I would have been intrigued a little bit by VJ, just if they had been in top 3. My question leans towards, I think they thought they were going to have a top 3 pick, maybe top 2 or 1. There are some people who were not a big fan, and guys, we're talking hypothetically here. But I wonder the fit if Cooper is in Washington versus him in Dallas, and maybe Dallas is top 3 and they pick differently. Or maybe they're number 2 and is the focus, are you still picking Harper at number 2 with some of the guards that they have on the roster already? What does that look like for them as far as selection? So, they thought they were going to be a little bit higher. They said as much, but I still think they came away with good prospects from this draft.
I tend to believe that no matter where Washington was going to be picking this draft cycle, that they were going to just take the highest upside available player.
Agreed.
And at pick 6, Trey Johnson was probably the highest upside.
Yes, I agree with that. I actually, not that they would have picked there, but I would have been intrigued if Coward had fallen. Would they have taken Coward instead of Will Riley if they had the ability to select him? Just 100%. One of the things that I was thinking about, just because of the Washington connection. And I don't know if was he in Washington State?
Washington State, yeah.
Okay. But just from the perspective of adding another guy who can play two ways, they already have Keyshawn George. I mean, not George. Is it George?
It's George, right? Yeah, it's I know for a fact it's George because his brother.
I'm mixing up the Georges here.
His brother Nate plays for Syracuse, is playing for Syracuse, and so that's how I know.
So to me, adding Coward would have been interesting as well. So Wizards are doing this thing properly. Funny enough, I could absolutely see them being top 2, top 3 in the draft next season just because of the talent. People are saying the East is weak. Not weak enough because Wizards were nowhere near even play-in range by the end of the season. So, but just looking at what they could possibly add an AJ, a Peterson, a Boozer, insane ability to continue building this thing out. I think they
and all three of those guys fit pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about the perspective of just because of what that roster looks like at the moment. And we're not going to dive too much in 2026 because we're going to have pods on that. But AJ fits from a wing perspective. Peterson works from the guard perspective. And adding Boozer right next to Sarr is an insane fit, in my opinion, as far as talent is concerned.
Right.
So Washington is doing this thing in an interesting way. They're building something well, and they're taking their time and they're patient with it. To close, I feel like Washington was one of the teams that showed that they were trying to win games last season. They beat the Nuggets twice, just as an example. And so to me, it's not like they just want to lose games. They have tried to win games. They're just so nice that the talent isn't necessarily developed to the point where they could compete every night. However, I think that they're starting to build something really, really cool as far as their roster construction. They've added vets that can add some experience and nuance to the league and help these guys be good pros.
Feels like a very ethical textbook rebuild.
Yeah, like exactly.
It's like if you're trying to realistically rebuild a team right way in 2K, this is how you do it. So, guys, unless you had an honorable mention in winners, I think we hit the nail on probably every team that I wanted to talk about that I think came away as like clear-cut winners. Like,
agreed.
I think that Orlando had a very good draft, but for me, I'm shaky on the fact if Chase is going to be an NBA player ever, just because if the height enables it and him on the defensive end, and two, I love Noah Penda as a prospect. I think he's a very good defender. He's a great feel for the game. He's very physical. But my issue with him is his fit on this Magic team. You add a non-shooter to a team that doesn't
struggled to shoot last year.
So and also I think that front court is definitely log jammed a bit. We know they have like a fixed center rotation. They have Paulo, they have Franz. He's not getting minutes over them. Tristan DeSilva started a bunch of games last year. You have Bane that can play the 3. So it's going to be tough for Penda to carve out a role. I wonder if he's stashed next season or if he's just going to hang on the end of the bench. But I think they introduced
him already. They've introduced him here in Orlando already. And so I don't know what his minutes look like.
Right. So what they chose, they chose him with 32. There's a bunch of guys that I think at the top at that pick would have fit a little bit better. I think that Chaz Lanier would have been great for them
for the shooting, for sure.
A guy that can just knock down a variety of shots, whether it's off the dribble, off the catch. Cam Jones would have been interesting for a team that just got rid of Cole Anthony. It might, and I think Anthony Black's could be a good role player, but this is a guy. Cam Jones reminds me a bit of TJ McConnell a little bit.
Yeah.
In the sense that he's just a very very smart player. When he drives, he kind of has this instinct where he knows where all these guys are on the court and knows the exact angle to attack.
Right.
So I think he would have been a good pick. Even a guy like Elijah Martin would have been a fun pick because I feel like he's from Florida 1, and 2, he fits that Orlando physical energy that they play with.
Exactly. I think I was surprised that they didn't go Tyrese Proctor. They didn't go Kobe Bray. I thought those were guys they probably would have added. Bray for the shooting, just because of the size and the shooting. I thought that that's what they would do because they need to add additional shooters on the floor so that you can't key in on Bane. And in minutes that you flash some of those minutes together. And then I was surprised that they didn't go Proctor because he's a two-way guy. So you add somebody who's defensive, especially if you're going to add defense, but you add the ability to play defense and he can shoot the ball. He's your 3-and-D kind of shooting guard / wing that you maybe play up. You maybe play him at the wing if you're trying to run some things. He probably slot there a little bit. But they, I'm intrigued if Penda's defensive.
They trade up for him. They trade up with the Celtics to get him,
which is to be seen if that swing is something that they're going to be rewarded for. I think Penda is a good player. I am intrigued because he has an NBA body. Right. I am intrigued to see if he is worth the trading up for. If maybe they wouldn't have got him where they were initially slotted to, possibly, or if the Celtics would have taken Penda ahead of that.
So the Celtics wanted to take Rasheer at 32, but because he was the most obvious best player available, he obviously went 31. But also, I think Penda was probably the second best player available consensus-wise. Right. So maybe that's just what Orlando's strategy was going into the draft, because you could argue at 25 that Jace was the best prospect available. No, he's probably – I think he probably is a better prospect than Saraf was. McNeely's the only guy that would have been like 100%. He's definitely better than him. Same thing with Fleming. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm unsure how he's going to fit, but it's to be seen.
Well, we have covered winners and losers of this draft. We're moving into 2026. Look out for a lot of pods from us covering some of these guys as we head later into the year and some of the college games start up.
Summer League next week.
Yeah, a lot of exciting guys. This 2026 draft is so talented. And so there's so many guys to cover and get to talk about. I'm intrigued to talk about so many of them. Dame Sarr is on the top of my list. I'm already kind of carving out, so look out for that article. I'm sure Jacob is working on several guys as well.
Yeah. I just put out a piece of my 3 underrated prospect that transferred, guys that are in new places that can really flourish. Yeah. So I put that up like a week ago, but I'm going to keep delving into more of these like college guys who returners who I think have a chance of being real NBA players.
Agreed. And so look out for a lot of that stuff. There are some guys who are going to be in next year's draft that we thought were going to go late first round, maybe middle of the first round to second round this season and this draft class. So look out for some pieces to kind of see what their games look like returning. And thanks for watching, all 156 of you, 140 of you that tuned in. Look out for us to put out more stuff. Thanks for watching Draft Stack. Peace.